If anything, the Oklahoma Sooners will have not one, but two All-Americans from their 2022 recruiting class.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you all for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in, subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to, as well as on YouTube. So hit that like and subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss when a show drops. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Jay Smith of Unfair Sports, been covering OU football, SEC, and college football in general for about 5 years, and we've got some great topics to dive into today. Are there trap games on the Sooners schedule? We're going to point out a couple of games that I think the Sooners will really have to pay attention to. Some breakout candidates from the 2022 class who I think will also have at least two All-Americans. But first, recruiting has been a little bit on the quiet side. Now, the Oklahoma Sooners are waiting on a commitment potential. There's an announcement coming later on today from an in-state player that the Sooners hope will end up their direction. I don't know if it will or won't. We've gotten at least one future cast or prediction toward us for Braden Presley, but I don't know if it will end in that direction for the Sooners. I wanted to, but I don't know. But because of that, recruiting and fans have been a little antsy over the last few days about it. We are now in the new year. We are now in the revenue sharing era. And Oklahoma's going to have to make some tough decisions and really focus in on particular positions that they want to see and be successful at going forward. There was a report that came out on the 1st that there were a lot of front-loaded NIL deals that were going to not only current players, but recruits to get them to commit before, or at least give their verbal before July 1st. And all of those NIL deals will have to go through the whole clearinghouse thing. And so because of that, you start to see a ton of commitments come out, but Oklahoma did not get that. And it appears that Oklahoma decided they did not want to jump in the game of front loading a whole bunch of high school players NIL deals and not know what they're going to get out of them when they get on campus. And so because they're taking more of a conservative approach, we have to ask the question, will Oklahoma abandon recruiting in high school for the most part and live in the transfer portal? Or will they find that good balance and focus on one or the other depending on what the position is? For me, the formula of success is you pay for 3 spots: offensive line, defensive line, and quarterback. From there, you get recruits that on the other spots that you can develop and hopefully groom, while also hitting that transfer portal and finding you some players that have proven themselves and go ahead and pay them. You're going to have situations where there's going to be a lot of teams that's not going to be able to afford the talented players they have. And because they're not going to be able to afford them, some of them are going to leave and look for other opportunities. Oklahoma has a chance of doing that. You can tell that they're being out here fiscally responsible. Now, they're not acting like they broke. We know Oklahoma's not broke. I don't want y'all to get the misconception and the BS statements of others telling you that Oklahoma's broke, because we've seen Oklahoma spend money on players they want to spend money on. You spend money on a Dominic Williams. They spent money on Jaden Jackson and David Stone. You saw them spend money to get R. Mason Thomas to stick around. You saw them spend money to keep Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman. You saw them spend money to get Deion Burks. You start to see them spend money on other wide receivers to get them out the port. Oklahoma is willing to spend money when it makes sense. You saw them spend money on offensive linemen. My point, they spent money on John Mateer. And they were battling it out with some other big programs that were willing to throw some additional money out there. Luckily, the relationship of hiring his offensive coordinator, in which they spent money on that too, allowed them to win his services. And I promise you this, They spent money on Jaden Ott. So the thought that Oklahoma's not willing to spend is not really true. It's more so they're willing to spend on where it makes sense. And the struggle right now is, how do you determine what makes sense? For a lot of fans today, they're truly not fully anti-NIL, but they're anti-paying players because they don't feel like the players have proven themselves to deserve the money they're getting. Well, the money they're getting is a fraction of what they would get in the pros, and they have proven in a lot of ways that they're deserving of being paid, because a lot of them get ranked and evaluated highly based upon their performance in high school. And so if you can show in high school you have some capabilities and they think it can translate to the next level, we're seeing Oklahoma willing to spend on those players. They spent on Michael Fasusi, Ryan Fogier. Again, you will recognize that Oklahoma's willing to spend in the places that make the most sense, and that's when you see them doing it. They spent to get a Marvin Jones Jr. Think about that. Not all these players that are on this roster that showed up, Kendall Daniels, they didn't just show up for free. Showed up because they got paid. And so Oklahoma's been strategic about it. Now, it may not be as wide open as you think it is. And I think that now that Jim Nagy's here, you're going to see even more of a tweak on the way that they spin and the way they evaluate and the way they have to go after people. Talked about that on Monday's episode. Feel free to go back and listen to it. But you'll recognize that Jim Nagy has a massive strategy when it comes to that. In my personal opinion, if there's one thing I think that Jim Nagy is going to end up doing, I think that he's going to have 50% of the roster be transfers and the other half be recruits. I can see him going half and half with ease, because he has the eye of evaluating kids not only at a high school, but he sees them when they play on the field and they say, hey, that's an NFL trait. And I bet you if we groom that, he can be even better. You want to find kids that have not hit their ceiling yet. And that's the thing that's terrifying when it comes to recruiting high school guys, is you start to see that sometimes a lot earlier than you expect. You see them dominate at the high school level. You're like, all right, get them here in your program. And then what happens? They end up not being able to meet higher expectations. They're still solid, but it's not at the level when they get a whole bunch of dudes at the exact same level as them. They just end up being your average player. And that happens to majority of college football players. That's why only the top 1% go to the pros. So in that case, what the Oklahoma Sooners will need to do is make sure they're hunting down players that still have massive potential going forward. And I think that that's what Nagy's going to do. I 100% believe the Sooners will have half and half when it comes to starter players that are recruits and players that are transfer portal guys. And I think that at that point, you'll recognize that, oh, they do have a plan, and it's one that sticks. I was actually talking to a friend of mine about that not too long ago, and he's not very fond of the transfer portal, and I kind of changed his mind a little bit when I pointed out, if a player comes in and they're not that good, and you want them off your team, you want them to transfer, right? Then again, if you got a player that transferred to multiple places constantly, that typically means that they're probably not going to make it at the next level. And then you caught on to it very early. So take advantage of that and recognize that this staff is trying to keep as many pieces as possible, in which Oklahoma has a really high retention rate. Granted, we talked about last episode, the 2023 class kind of exploded. But besides that, Oklahoma's done a really good job of retaining kids that they brought in as recruits. Speaking of recruits, 2022 class, a lot of juniors, a lot of upperclassmen. Who's going to break out? I think we're going to see an All-American there. Let's talk about it. Coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building that wealth. Like myself, I got to start planning for college. Got one in college, one getting ready for college. So I need to make sure that I'm spending my money wisely and understand where the waste is going so that I can bring that money back, leverage it, put it in investments, and have some change ready for when my son hit and leaves off for college. So Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. And thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in and subscribing to the show. You can find us wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to, and on YouTube. So hit that bell notification so you don't miss when a single episode drop. For your second listen, check out our guy, Brian Smith, over there at The Portal, talking all recruiting. This is the recruiting season. He'll get you all the insight on players that are looking at Oklahoma, because he had a couple of them they did videos on that got your boy excited. But speaking of recruits, the 2022 class, we're going to continue this series as we're going to look at some players who we think is going to break out. And I'm going to keep it a buck. I think that Oklahoma is going to end up having not one, but two All-Americans from the 2022 class at the end of the season. So that's a bold take. Hey, take it to the bank, baby. I expect these guys to show out. But when you look at it, that class still has a lot more kids still on roster that are veteran, a little bit more than we had lost. The 23 class, that imploded. 22 class, not so much. That's where you have your R. Mason Thomases of the world, your Jaren Canics, Javante Barnes, Jake Taylors, Gentry Williams. But I'm going to tell you this. At the end of the season, here's the two names that I expect to actually be All-Americans. And the first one, Robert Spears-Jennings, the safety at 6'1", some change. My expectation with him has been that Robert Spears-Jennings becomes that dude for the defense. And so when me and John talked about who's going to take over and be that leader, that Billy Bowman voice out there, I think it's going to end up being Robert Spears-Jennings. As I would look and evaluate it more, he came in there like a lightning rod. He is a true senior. He is ready to go in. And this is the year where I think that he'll take that next leap needed to put himself in the conversation of, at minimum, a day 2 draft pick. And if he does that, that will put him as an All-American in college football, because he has the talent and everything. He's got the speed. He's got the size. He's got the hit. I mean, when you saw him blitzing against Tennessee and against Auburn, you're like, yes, give me more. And then the interception against, was a Houston, he just came across the middle and just snatched that thing. You need more of that. And that's something I actually expect out of Robert Spears-Jennings. I expect him to become that leader and take over for us on the defensive side of the ball. So because of that, the best part is him being that mentor for our young pups, the Reggie Powers of the world, the Michael Boganowskis of the world, the Jaden Hardys of the world, that next level of safeties that we're going to have show up. And then from there, having Omarion Robinson as well as Marcus Wimberly be able to really understudy with him. It gets me beyond excited that there is a chance that with them learning from him, we're going to have Brandon Hall's got himself a nice lineup of safeties for the future. And then we've also got some recruits we're working on now that if we land them too, Brandon Hall's got the easiest job in college football. He's just that darn good. He's going to have his room popping, and that's my expectation. And so I don't think that there's any other reason for, or any other player that to me is going to be any bigger than what Robert Spears-Jennings is going to be. Now, granted, we expect Peyton Bowen from the 23 class to have his breakout year, but I think Robert Spears-Jennings is one that should be an All-American. The other one that I expect to be an All-American, it's very easy to say, it's going to be R. Mason Thomas. I think R. Mason Thomas is going to go out there and solidify himself as one of the premier edge rushers in college football. I mean, last year finishing with those 9 sacks, 6 of them coming in SEC play. He had 11 QB hurries and all kinds of stuff. Everything about his game made you say, yeah, I need to keep my eyes out on him. I think that he's going to be a dude that's going to be a pain for other teams to have to deal with. And that's my feelings when it comes to R. Mason coming in this year. Teams are going to have to focus on him. The good thing is they can't make that mistake because of this defensive line. As you go down the line of it, him and Marvin Jones Jr. are going to terrorize folks. Daniel Koye and Peach Adebawari are ready. Taylor Wine, he may actually show up and become the big surprise from that 23 class. But I do believe that that's the two players that will end up being your All-Americans. I think honorable mentions, if you have to go into it, the crazy part is mainly going to be talking about defensive dudes because that still has Kip out there. You got Kobe in that class. There's a good chance that those guys are next up on that list too. They could be some honorable mentions. But if Jaden Gibson comes back healthy and continues that what he was doing in 2023, Jaden Gibson is one that's going to be in the conversation. I mean, he was a top 150 player in the country coming in out of Florida, and at 6'5", if he can be as good as he was in 23, if that full year of rest and he was able to really heal and there wasn't a major setback, it was just a sit his butt down because we don't want him to get hurt. If he comes out, the game may change. And so for me, I want to see if I'm not going to put too many eggs in the Jaden Gibson basket yet. And it's nothing against him. No shade on him. It's I ain't to see you do it on the field. And when I see you do it on the field, I'll feel more comfortable. But that 2022 class, man, they still had some other studs in there. I mean, Javonte Barnes is still here, which is crazy that he's still out there. And then, of course, Jake Taylor and Jacob Sexton, your two offensive linemen that, as they develop, they could be something. Heck, Jaren Kanak moving into the offensive side of the ball. What do y'all think? Do you think Jaren Kanak could really surprise us this coming season on the offensive side? I'm truly curious about that because as talented as he is, the bigger thing is he just needs to really control it. The good thing is that I think he has the capabilities of controlling it and really harnessing that speed. Because, I mean, he was a speed demon on the offensive side of the ball. You put him out there and you get him just in a little bit of open field and let him just run, he's really hard to catch. And it's just, he said it himself. He just couldn't figure out linebacker to be as successful as he wanted because of the complexities of how Brent Venables does it. So we totally understand that. I would love for Jaren Kanak to show up and show out, but we'll see what happens. But I'm going to tell you, my two guys that I believe will end up being All-Americans, Robert Spears-Jennings as well as R. Mason Thomas. Sooner schedule. Had questions. Is there a trap game on there? Let's talk about it next here on Locked On Sooners. And once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning and subscribing to the show and finding us wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to and here on YouTube. So make sure you hit that bell notification so you know whenever new episodes drop. All right, schedule. The big talk right now is when you look at the schedule of Oklahoma's opponents, are there any games where they could be considered trap games? And what a trap game in my definition is, this is mine. Y'all's are probably a little bit on the different side, but mine's here is this. A trap game is a game where we ain't paying no attention to that squad. We're so focused on the next team that we ain't even thinking about that team. And when I looked at Oklahoma's schedule, I saw two of those that jumped out to me that even though I expect Oklahoma to be thoroughly prepared, could be a game that ends up being a trap for them. The first game, Red River. I know, it's Red River game. No reason to even think that game will be a trap. Travel to South Carolina right afterwards. That's when you're starting your true big-time SEC run. So, for me, Illinois State's not a trap game. They should blow them out in preparation for Michigan. Temple on the road should be a blowout because Temple has new coach, new quarterback. They had a massive refresh there. Then you're coming home to play Auburn. So there shouldn't be anything that. Then you got a bye week and then Kent State. But then you got Texas. And you got South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. Some would say the Ole Miss game will be probably the biggest trap on that 5-game slate. I think Texas is more because I know we really want to beat Texas bad. We also will be mentally preparing ourselves for 4 straight SEC battles. The good thing for Oklahoma is that they don't have any back-to-back games where they're on the road back-to-back weeks. They do have back-to-back road games, but they're not week over week. There is a bye week in between the other one here. So that helps out a lot. Plus, you kind of got a little bit of a cupcake before you play, your 3 biggest games of the year with Illinois State, Temple, and then Kent State. Those being before Michigan, Auburn, and Texas really helps with preparing the body for more battles, especially because those 3 teams are not very good as far as competition goes. But for Oklahoma, that Texas game is the one that they're going to have to get up for. This will be once again just like, back in was that 2022 when things were awful. He had a tight end playing quarterback. That was a bad game against Texas. And then you came back the next year and you won it. But then you had last year, which was another bad game against Texas. The expectation is for you to have a good game and pull out the win. That can be a trap and a lot of pressure on a team. I think Oklahoma will be okay there. But that one to me is one trap game that I think they may accidentally look past, depending on how Texas comes in that game too. Like I saw a video that Josh Pate had, and someone asked if there's a possibility for Oklahoma to walk into that game against Texas 5-0 and Texas walks in 3-2. Because remember, Texas schedule, they got Ohio State to start the year, and the week before they play Oklahoma, they travel to the Swamp, which is considered the 7th hardest stadium to play in on the road. 7th toughest, right? So if Texas goes up against down there in Florida and DJ Lagway shows up and that Florida team looks really much better, I understand. It's Billy Napier. We're not throwing all of our, reliance in him. But if that does happen, there's a good chance that Texas walks into game 3-2. That is a possibility. Because the expectation is there a chance that whenever that game comes up, that Texas could end up being a slight dog on the road. They're a field goal and a half dog against Ohio State on the road already. And then the Florida game, which could end up being them being another dog. A slight one, but could be. We'll see how Florida plays and if they actually live up to their side of the bargain before that game. But again, if that happens, then what? Because for Florida, with Texas coming into town, Florida has a bye week. Now, granted, before that 5th game of the year for them, they travel to LSU and then they travel to Miami in back-to-back weeks. But they got that big old bye week right before they play Texas. And at home, they're going to get up in preparation to play against them. So it's intriguing to see that. So the question now lies, it continues to be there. Texas shows up 3-2. Do you think Oklahoma overlooks them? That's why I say there's a possibility for a trap. Next game, the other game that I think is a trap. Now, this is the one that Oklahoma should not fall for. Like, I don't care about the games around it. This is the game that you got to win. This is the game that you need to win by 50 if you can. You need to hang half a honey on them if you can do it. It's that Missouri game. Missouri comes to the crib after Oklahoma plays at Tuscaloosa, and then they're at the crib against LSU to wrap the season up. Depending on how the year goes, that LSU game could be a critical one to leading into potential playoff stardom or whatever, depending on how the years go. That Missouri game could end up being a trap. Missouri had a lot of changes. We know. New quarterback, new running back, which a lot of people like Ahmad Hardy. They're starting running back. He's raving reviews on him. Is he one that is Missouri a team that Oklahoma should truly be worried about? That late in the season, I'm going to say yes. That game is smelling trappy more and more as I look through it. It's looking like it. Mainly because, again, traveling to Tuscaloosa, if you finally go out there and you pull off another W, you own the state of Alabama for a 2nd straight year. And you know LSU's coming up, and you've had not 2 good games, 3 straight games that are just against LSU. You want to get revenge. You want to get revenge for 03. You want to get revenge for 19. You want to get revenge for last year. That Missouri game you cannot overlook. And it's always a possibility if Missouri has fell on their face, that's a game that could be overlooked on accident. It's already 11 o'clock kickoff. So I know it's going to be an early one. Oklahoma can't let them do that to them. That's the one game to me that could be a very bad scenario for the Sooners. But even with the rest of the schedule, I know we could have added Tennessee in there. The good thing about the Tennessee game is it's right before a bye week. So there's a possibility you play Ole Miss and you're looking at that bye week because you're just like, I just need to recover. We've gone through 3 straight tough games. We're going to go to our 4th straight tough game. The bodies are aching and a dud could come out of Tennessee. I totally believe that Tennessee can be an honorable mention for your trap games, mainly because that bye week is enticing right afterwards. That's the recovery week. It's those mice on everything. Get a lot of sleep, catch up on homework, whatever. It's there. But I really think Missouri and Texas are 2 games that no matter what, Oklahoma's going to have to stay focused and pull off, especially because this Red River is just Red River. It's the game that we always have in the back of our mind and we're always concerned about because it's Red River. It's going to be one that's going to be heavily concerning for the Sooners. So let's see what Oklahoma does there. Let me know what you all think. Which game do you think is a trap? I want to hear from you all. And that's our episode of Locked On Sooners. Thank you all for pulling up and being part of the show. We appreciate all the love and support. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, as well as subscribe here on YouTube. Hit the bell notification. That way you know when all of our new episodes drop. Follow me on Unfair Sports. You can follow and check out my channel, Unfair Sports, here on YouTube. You can follow John at John9 Williams, as well as see his writing over at SoonersWires.com. So until we catch y'all later, I'm Jay Smith. Have a great 4th of July. Boomer Sooner.